NFL Live is presented by KFC.
NFL Live begins with this timeline, 4:03 a.m. Joe, I love how early you got up for this. Will undergo surgery on his torn left tricep. Putting up the caption, "Let's do this." Joe, get better. 7:21 a.m. The Dolphins released cornerback Byron Maxwell. He played in just 2 games this season, not since week 3. Remember when he was the high-priced free agent quarterback a few years ago? Life comes at you fast. 11:44, the Colts plays rookie safety Malik Hooker on injured reserve. He tore his ACL and MCL on Sunday in the loss to the Jacksonville Jaguars. And at just before noon Eastern, the NFL upheld the 1-game suspension from Marshawn Lynch for making contact with an official Thursday night and running onto the field to do it. Lynch will miss the Raiders game Sunday in Buffalo, where, of course, he began his career and once famously said all they have to eat there is at Dave & Buster's. Welcome in to NFL Live. Glad you are here with us. Trey Wingo, Tim Hasselbeck, Louis Riddick, and the Commander-in-Chief, Bill Polian. We're all shocked, by the way, that suspension was upheld, right? Shocked. I did not see that coming. By the way, if you're not in on the Wentz wagon already in Philadelphia, I have one question for you. What are you possibly waiting for? Monday night, Carson Wentz put on a show at the expense of the Washington Redskins. And pity poor Kirk Cousins, who's still looking for that win number 1 in Monday Night Football. Cousins struggled on 3rd down, 3rd and 1. That's actually just a great play by Jenkins. That's not a struggle by Kirk Cousins.
No, it was great close on the route.
And then another 3rd and 1, and that one might be on him a little bit. Then on 3rd and 5, looking for Jamison Crowder, not on the same page there. Washington 4 of 12 on 3rd down, and Kirk a spot cross, a tad miffed, a bit irked. As for the North Dakota Bison, Carson Wentz, toughness, oh yeah, he had that in bunches. 1st and 10, their own 42. And he gets sacked by 1, 2, 3 defenders. John Gruden has a name for Wentz ability, though.
He is not tough. He is North Dakota tough.
That is a fact, because on the very next play, Wentz does this. Gets a clean pocket, let her rip. Next-gen graphic, a throw of 62 points.
You kind of go quiet in there a little bit, and you can pop out of it. It's a great job.
It was unbelievable.
I like to go quiet.
John Darrenbos, the former Eagles long snapper, would definitely approve because he's a magician. Wentz, 4 touchdowns, and the Eagles win by 10. So that was the good news. They won the game. The big win, though, was marred in Philly by the injury to left tackle Jason Peters. Adam Schefter joins us now. Adam, listen, it looked for a time there might have been some good news for Jason Peters, but apparently that's not the case.
Well, Trey, they went into this morning thinking that it was only going to be a sprained, torn MCL. They sent him off to an MRI, and when the MRI results came back, it turned out that it was a torn ACL and a torn MCL, and Jason Peters is now done for the season, as is the linebacker Jordan Hicks, who tore his Achilles. He's also done, but Jason Peters is a significant loss along the Eagles' offensive line. They will now have to figure out a way to replace him. Keep in mind the trade deadline is 1 week from today, 4 o'clock Eastern. The Eagles are traditionally one of the most aggressive teams in the league. I'm sure they'll be scouring across the league, though it's difficult to find anybody who's willing to part with a quality offensive tackle. But the Eagles now have a hole, and after last night's great night for Philadelphia, today is met with a bit of disappointment.
Well, Adam, no question, and it means they may have to ride Holapuli Vaitai as that left tackle. And yes, I just wanted to say Holapuli Vaitai. Carson Wentz looks to be making the big sophomore leap. He's got an NFL-high 17 touchdown passes, the most through 7 games in Eagles team history, and Philly's had some pretty good quarterbacks. 3 of Wentz's 4 touchdown passes last night came out of 12 personnel. That's 1 running back, 2 tight ends, and 2 wideouts. NFL next-gen stats show us Wentz has been more effective throwing out of that package. He's tied for an NFL best 6 touchdowns this year out of 12 personnel after throwing an NFL high 7 picks in 2016. You know what's really interesting about this, Tim, as we continue to look at his night? We've seen both Jared Goff and Carson Wentz make massive jumps this year. Carson started great, then had a little stumble toward the latter half of the season, and Jared Goff's rookie year was a wash. He's been doing great things. But what are you seeing out of Carson Wentz in year 2?
Well, one of the things you have to do if you want to be a quarterback that takes that next step is make difficult throws. And so if you look at what Philadelphia has planned, they're trying to isolate and attack, and they did all night. DJ Swearinger in pass coverage, not his forte.
And to be fair, Josh Norman was not in this game, and that certainly affected the second.
And listen, if you're going to try to take a shot on a safety, most of the time it's going to happen downfield. It's going to take a while. We saw in the highlight there was good pass protection. Now the route combination that Philadelphia has drawn up is they're going to try to make it look like you have layered corners, okay? You're going to try to make it look like it's that right there. But instead what they're going to do is they're going to run a corner pump to get Swearinger to try to bite on the corner. Now, we saw on the highlight, and we just play this forward a little bit here, you know, the first corner is going to hold Breland in the corner here, and so now you're isolated. You have Mac Hollins on a safety in all of this space here.
Right. Mac Hollins can fly, by the way.
But you've got to throw it 63 yards on the money.
62.8.
Exactly right.
62.8.
So look, that's fine. You can draw it up, and it looks great. Hey, we have the shot on the safety, but you got to be able to deliver that throw. That's a massive throw. Now, I want you to take a look at what they're doing here. This is in the red zone. This really shows his command of their offense here. Really, it's going to kind of be a progression read, you know, for Carson Wentz. He's going to go inside out, just like I drew it, inside out. Now, as he drops back to throw it, he initially wants to give the ball to Brent Selleck right there. He had just pulled the ball down as he was getting ready to throw it because he kind of senses color inside his face. Well, now he wants to climb inside the pocket. Well, now he's got people all over him, moves up a little bit more, and now he's got Foster, the linebacker, that's about ready to be in his face.
Down, yeah.
Now, remember, we drew this route. Clement in the back, he's just running a flat route. That's where Carson Wentz is expecting him. He's expecting him to have run a flat. Well, because he out-leverages the coverage and he kind of finds himself in no man's land, he decides to turn this thing up. Well, Carson Wentz, knowing where everybody is, knowing the progression of 1, 2 to 3, and seeing him with everything that's going around him in the pocket, is able to make that throw to a guy who's not supposed to be in that spot.
Yeah.
That is just ridiculous quarterback play. That play right there is one of those things you can say, hey, there's a quarterback that is playing so far above the X's and O's in terms of really making a positive play when really most quarterbacks end up on the ground and it's a sack.
Well, that's the most impressive thing about that. And Bill Polian, I want to get your take on this here because, you know, quarterbacks, sometimes when you deal with trash in the pocket or conflict in the pocket, it's a problem for them. It doesn't seem to be a problem for him right now, does it?
No, it doesn't. He's done some things that are absolutely amazing. Lou and I were on this field with him at the Senior Bowl. We saw the arm strength. We saw the acumen. We saw the command in the huddle. What we didn't see was his ability to escape. He is unbelievable. He made 2 plays against the Redskins in Washington on opening day that were absolutely unbelievable. He came out of a conflicted pocket, rolled to his left, threw the ball 60 yards off balance for a touchdown. He makes the play last night, and then the most amazing one is the one we just showed, because he had a defender wrapped around him, and he had an adjustment by one of the receivers, and he finds the adjustment and makes the throw. His Houdini-like qualities are like nothing I've seen in recent years.
Here's that play you were talking about right here.
This is in Philadelphia, yes. Look at this. Here he goes.
Aguilar.
That
Falling
was in
away.
Washington. That was in that opening game in Washington.
That's the opening day in Washington. We broadcast it on ESPN Radio. And then here's the second play for the touchdown last night, where he had someone wrapped around him. And then, whoop, here he comes out of the pile.
It really is remarkable. You know, we were sort of having this debate in the newsroom. What was a better escape by an Eagles quarterback on Monday night? Randall Cunningham getting away from Carl Banks and throwing a touchdown? Or that one, I think it was a 3rd and 11, was it not? And he rambled for the first down. Okay, so, Louis, let's talk about this team for a minute that you're obviously familiar with, having spent time in that front office. He leads the league. Carson Wentz does in touchdown passes. They're the only 6-win team in football. Look, we get it. Things change weekly around here. But right now, as we've looked at the body of work for every team in football, are they the most complete team?
Well, let's just say in the NFC, I think they are, without a doubt, they're right there. They're 1 or 2 in the NFC, and I think there's some teams that right now would maybe surprise you, and some other teams that are kind of, they're faltering a little bit, but they're still in the mix. But there's no question that right now, as long as they don't suffer too many more injuries. Look, Jason Peters, that's a huge injury.
Big one.
Jordan Hicks on the defensive side of the ball is just as important because he's the primary signal caller, and he's a guy who took control of this defense last year. So that can start becoming a problem. The thing that worries me about this football team is on the edges, at corner, in the secondary, when teams start putting the ball up, if they can protect their passer, you'll expose them down the field outside the numbers here. You won't expose. Used to not be able to expose them in the middle of the field because Jordan was very smart. He's very smart about pattern matching, and the safeties are fantastic. But on the outside is where you can maybe get them. That's the only thing that worries me about them going forward now. Losing Jason is huge because now you may have to make 2 moves to solve one. You may have to move Lane to left tackle and put Big V, I'm not even going to say his name, put him at right tackle. Okay, so 2 moves to make 1 is never good. You'd like to just plug in 1 for 1, which is what they did last night.
Which is what they did last night.
Is that going to be the long-term option? Because Lane was supposed to be a left tackle anyway. Right. That's what he played in college. So I like this football team a lot because Carson makes such a huge difference. The wide receivers are making a huge difference in the front 7, the front 4 in particular. Well, about front 7 guys, considering how many people they rotate, they'll just wreck your game for you. So they've got a lot of good things going for them.
The thing that worries me is that Carson last night was the leading rusher with 61 yards.
That can't happen.
That can't happen.
They've had a couple of games where that ground game has been good.
Yeah, they've got to get it going on a consistent basis, and I think they need to give Blunt the kind of plays that he runs best, which is power, gap scheme, let him go north and south. He's not a good zone runner.
Right.
But if you give him the kind of, give him a tunnel to run in, he'll get into it and he'll come out the back end. So they need to get that going. If they get that going, they're going to be a handful.
And again, 18 touchdowns last year for LeGarrette Blount. You know what he can do inside the 3-yard line for certain. Okay, on the other side of this, you have Washington. Hopes were very high. They won the division a couple years ago. They came within a game of making the playoffs last year. It's a big loss. They've been swept now by Philadelphia, and they are the only 6-win team in football. Is it panic or patience time for the Washington Redskins?
I'm a bit panicked about them, in large part because of their, I need to hit it, because in large part because of the upcoming schedule. I mean, take a listen to this, guys. Dallas, at Seattle, Minnesota, at New Orleans. They have the Giants. It's a divisional game. It'll be competitive even with what's going on with the Giants. And then at Dallas again. I mean, 5 out of their next 6 games could be games that they're not favored to win. I mean, and so I just look at a team that seems like they didn't necessarily replace players that they lost with the same caliber, the same production level from those guys, and I think that is going to start to show itself a bit.
Yeah, especially when they start going up against defenses again that can come down and smother them on the outside at wide receiver, and then they will start focusing. They can handle their receivers one-on-one, let's put it that way, and then start focusing their attention on a guy like Chris Thompson, who right now is their explosive playmaker. Jordan Reed won't stay on the football field or can't stay on the football field, however you want to term it, so that makes them very deficient on 3rd down, which is what you saw last night. And then defensively, look, they need Josh Norman back. They need some people who can cover.
So are you panic or patient?
Oh, I'm panicked.
Panic? You're panicked?
Oh, yeah. Let me.
Just making sure.
I'm done.
Bill?
He's going to hand it back.
You're patient?
I'm patient.
Bill, the Godfather takes the long view, always.
And here's why. They're playing for the wild card, essentially, because Philadelphia's got a 2-game lead on it. So, and they've got the tiebreaker. So when you look at this team compared to other teams that are going to fight for the wild card, number 1, they have a quarterback. Number 2, they have a marvelous running back in Thompson who can do things with the ball in his hands and in the passing game. Number 3, they have young receivers who have a chance to get better. Number 4, they have a very much improved defense.
Yeah,
as long as that defensive front stays healthy, they got a chance to win a lot of games and be in a lot of games. And so I'm patient with them. I think they have a very, very good chance at the wild card.
Loss of Jonathan Allen hurts them a lot.
There's no question about that.
He was crushing the interior of offensive lines.
Had he stayed healthy, that defense was close to dominant, and not now without him.
Here's the other good news for Washington. No more Monday night games. Why is that relevant? Kirk Cousins, again, not always his fault, has lost his first 6 Monday night football games. The only other quarterbacks to do that, Joe Willie Namath and Archie Manning. So he's in good company over the long scheme, but again, you don't want to be 0 for 6 in the bright lights of Monday Night Football. We got lots more coming for you here. Just getting warmed up here on this edition of NFL Live. More panic or patience in the NFC. Our playoff hopes slipping away from the Atlanta Falcons as their offense seems as lost as they were in the fog Sunday night. And still, Eagle fans fight for life and his bond with Carson Wentz.
So much deeper than football. It's what it comes down to. It's so much more than just a game.
NFL Live is presented by KFC's Nashville Hot and Honey Mustard Barbecue Georgia Gold. Welcome back to NFL Live, presented by KFC.
So the question then becomes, are you guys panicking or are you guys having
Can I stomp on it? Can I
You're all in?
stomp on it?
Panic or patience?
You didn't know. Ready? Wait, you're not going to wait?
Wait.
I am patient here.
Are you out here?
Thank you.
It's panic mode right now.
Are you in the Muzak elevator situation as well?
Right. No concern. You're starting quarterback.
Oh, you're okay.
Yeah, I'm definitely on the elevator with the music. A little jazz would be nice as well.
You know why? You were so fast, the director wasn't ready with the lights. That's how fast you were. There are certain segments that are just made for people. Panic or Patience was made for Herm Edwards.
All of these segments are.
They're just made for Herm Edwards. So we do it because you do it every week, whether your team wins or loses. So let's go through some teams in the NFC. Are we panicking or staying patient with them? And let's start with the Green Bay Packers. They lost their first game without quarterback Aaron Rodgers Sunday at Lambeau. And his substitute, Brett Hundley, completed under 50% of his passes, threw for less than 100 yards, and had no touchdowns and had one interception in a loss at home to the New Orleans Saints. Timmy! Yeah. Panic or patience?
I'm not usually this negative. Yeah, actually, I am usually this negative.
Negative.
I am panicked about this situation. You know, Brett Hundley, who I believe is a good player and really should show some promise, really did not.
Because they had a running game in that contest.
They had a running game, and really in an offense that's designed for you to complete a high percentage of your passes, he was way off. And he was making poor decisions. Certain RPOs that were easy decisions.
Run pass options.
But like he wasn't making good decisions on it. So thank you. I'd be more specific. So when your backup quarterback comes in, everybody else around him needs to play better. But you need your backup quarterback to play better than Brett Hundley played. And the division's tough.
Yeah, I agree. I'm going to panic too because you know what? This was my concern, Trey. I thought Aaron made so many off-schedule plays.
Correct.
And had such chemistry with the wide receivers. I thought once you take that element out of this offense, what does this offense become? Now, can Brett play better? Yeah. But is he going to be able to really elevate this offense to the point where it offsets the limitations that this defense has, which is in the secondary? They can't stop anybody either. So I think they're in trouble. Because you needed that specialness that Aaron brought in order for this team to contend for what they want to contend for, which is for division titles and Super Bowls, not just to be 500. Yeah. So I think they're in a little bit of trouble.
And to your point, everything around the backup quarterback was working. The running game was working. They got 2 interceptions early off Drew Brees, and it still didn't translate into success for Brett Hundley. We'll see if he can get that figured out going forward. Meanwhile, in Tampa Bay, after an inexplicable fumble by Adam Humphries late on the road in Buffalo, which led to the game-winning field goal by Stephen Hauschka, Tampa Bay has lost 3 straight games, and despite all the additions in the offseason, are now in last place in the NFC South. Makes that really hard to figure when the Saints started 0-2, and they've won 4 straight games. Sweet Lou, panic or patience?
I'm in a full-blown nuclear panic on this team. And I'll tell you why. This team disappoints me greatly. Look, the past 3 weeks, New England, Arizona, Buffalo, they've given up over 400 yards of total offense to these guys and had the ball just jammed down their throat over and over. All 3 teams have progressively run the ball better against them. Offensively, 3 straight weeks, they can't get over 100 yards, 5 turnovers. The team is trending the wrong way, and they're playing. This is the thing that bothers me the most. Forget the stats. Just when you watch the tape, the style and the lack of ferocity and really in the lack of competitiveness that they're playing with, just sits there and goes, something's wrong here. Because they're better than this. They're better than this on paper. You got T.J. Ward now saying, I didn't come here to be a rotational player.
Chris Baker saying the same thing.
Exactly. So it's just like
lineman.
Something's off. Yeah. Something's off, and it's kind of across the board.
To me, that's the key. I'm panicking on them as well, and it's when things aren't going well, you know what you need to do? Everyone needs to stick together, circle the wagon.
Great boomer.
And as soon as you get to that point where you're like, hey, man, this is happening because I'm not playing enough. This is on you. Now all of a sudden you're a mess. Yep. It's a disaster at that point. That's why I think Dirk Cutter is saying, hey, listen, no, we can't do that.
Right. Yeah.
I just don't know. I mean, some of those big personalities in their team, really it's going to be Jameis Winston's that has to pull that team together.
By the way, what we're saying is don't go full Martavis. Don't go full Martavis.
Pretty much, yes.
Which we'll get into a little later on this edition of NFL Live. And then there's another team. Hey, remember that magical time long ago when the Falcons could score? That Falcons attack, as I said, was missing in the fog Sunday night in Foxborough. And actually, it's not just that game. They've had or averaged under 14 points a game in their last 3 weeks, 13.7. So let's bring in the man, the myth, Adam Schefter. The Ron Burgundy of our generation. Adam, panic or patience right now on Atlanta?
Panic, Trey. You look at this team right now. It is already lost to 3 other AFC East teams. It's lost to New England. It's lost to Miami. It's lost to Buffalo. And now it plays the 4th AFC East team this weekend, the New York Jets. Now, this would be a game that you would think the Falcons should steamroll and win easily. But right now, they are struggling. You pointed out the offensive statistics. They are not the same team that went to the Super Bowl last year. And if this team can't get it together, it's only one win behind the leaders in the NFC South, but still, that seems like an awfully far way apart.
Yeah, right now they're averaging about 21 points a game. Last year they averaged almost 34, and the only thing that's changed is the offensive coordinator. He's now the head coach in San Francisco. Adam, you got news on a former Atlanta Falcon who may be back in the league.
Well, you mentioned that one thing that has changed is Kyle Shanahan being in San Francisco, but they also don't have Dwight Freeney, who was something of a mentor to young defensive players on that Falcons roster. And I think they miss his presence, and Dwight Freeney today is in Seattle taking a physical and meeting with the Seattle Seahawks this week to see if they want to bolster their pass rush. So obviously they're missing Cliff Averill. He's on injured reserve. They're taking a look now at the 37-year-old Dwight Freeney, something of an ageless wonder.
Adam, I miss your musk. Thank you very much. We'll see what happens later on this edition of NFL Live. When we come back, they're out. The things that fans just like to tear into more than anything else. ESPN's NFL Power Rankings are out. We'll see what we think of them when we come back.
Some people are fearless. No pressure too great, no stage too big, not afraid